Good morning. This is the Bitcoin Morning Brief. I'm Leah Wald, and we're here with Tone, who is streaming from the UK. We have Jimmy, and we have Giacomo today, so it's going to be a fun Friday. I thought we were with you.
The Irish are going to be so mad at Leah.
I thought you were in London. Okay, well, help me out. How's
No. Dig deeper. I want you to get in lots and lots of trouble. Why don't you talk about Northern Ireland, Leah, and talk about how you support those people?
No.
Okay?
Okay, I'm in trouble.
Why don't you wear a bright orange shirt? I think that would work. Yeah.
I'm done speaking. All right, I'm not hosting, guys. I gotta go. I gotta
go before the end of the podcast in order to compensate and to apologize. Get drunk.
Like yesterday. I didn't say that one. All right, now I'm just getting myself in way too much trouble. So, okay, turning away from Dublin, Giacomo, how's everything in Italy, or am I gonna get myself in trouble again?
No, this is Italy. I hope that Switzerland will invade here, Milan, conquering it. But so far, it's still Italy. Unfortunately, everything is fine.
That's good. Jimmy, how's it going?
Pretty good. I mean, this is, I've been doing like podcasts all week. So it feels like, this par for the course. I feel very at home doing this stuff with you guys. And yeah. Are we going to reveal that picture, by the way, or no? Is that for later?
Oh, damn. I knew I forgot something. I'm going to do it. I'm going to see if I can edit the video right now.
Oh, yeah, come on. Absolutely. And Jimmy, epic interview yesterday. You want to make a comment about it?
Yeah, so I had a little debate with Chris Pacia, between Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash. Naomi, Brockwell was kind enough to moderate that a little bit. It was a lot of fun. Please take a look. It's getting a lot of buzz on Twitter. Nix has already commented a bunch and called me a liar and stuff. So it's good stuff.
Nice. Always nice. And I heard there's a hat situation. It's not your J-pop hat. Or
no.
Today you're wearing a J-pop hat.
Right now? Yeah. So this was what I was wearing at the beginning, but of course, I was in a debate with the Bitcoin Cash guy, so I had to wear this.
There we go. Well, you're in a debate with Giacomo and Tone. Maybe.
Oh no!
You gotta keep
those are friends. I'm gonna put this back on. This is I'm gonna be
inspiring
Jimmy today.
It's literally black hat and white hat distinction. That's great.
Yes, that's exactly right. Black hat versus white hat. White hat is more inspiring. Black hat is I am going to crap on your project. Yeah.
Perfect. And Tone. Dublin, how's everything?
Yeah. Well, people are asking where they can watch the debate, Jimmy.
Oh yeah, so let me. I posted it on my Twitter last night, so it's all there.
Okay,
Nice.
And I'll see if I can throw it into the video description. But check out Jimmy's Twitter for the link.
Yeah, it was awesome. All right, so we shall go into Novogratz. Oh yeah, that's not my background for once. It's usually me that gets in trouble. It's already happening. So Mike Novogratz, definitely a lot of people were talking about this yesterday, says on a CNBC segment on buying a Bitcoin rival shows why regulators are clamping down on crypto. Simply put, I think this was 2 days ago now. He was accused on CNBC about pumping Ripple. Specifically, he said on the segment that he accused CNBC about pumping Ripple and said in the segment that buying Ripple epitomized the quote unquote peak nonsense of the Bitcoin mania that swept financial media and markets. As we know, he's a super bull. My opinion, he's heavily invested in this right now, right? He has been. He's a smart guy, but very simply put, he's guessing, I think. What I found interesting is that he's clearly sees that the regulators are starting to clamp down on the scams, but he, doesn't in his interview clearly state, in my opinion, what is the result and how it's going to be in price. So he keeps talking 3 months and 6 months, and now it's going to be, from there it's going to be great, but he can't really back this up. So I know everybody who's excited about this. You guys can tell me obviously differently, which would be great, but I think it's a bit of a silly story, particularly after setting himself up so much as a bull. So I think he's going to back up his claims. But Tone, I'll go to you since this is Wall Street. What was your take on what Novogratz has been screaming about?
Wow, I actually just listened to this interview that he did, or like right before our show, and it was like cringeworthy, right? I mean, he was pumping outright scams, and like the only thing that he said that was actually useful in that entire interview was at the very, very end, where he said, "Oh, everyone that's like," I forgot how he phrased it, but he basically referred to everyone as an Amway salesman, which normally is not a good thing, but he meant it as a good thing, and that everyone should be an Amway salesman. But he doesn't even realize that what he's proposing is like infinitely worse than an Amway salesman, because at least an Amway salesman sells you a product in a currency that you are familiar with. These people are selling you a product in a currency that they create out of thin air. So I think, I mean, it is opening my eyes to the fact that he was right in when he said that this bubble is only getting started, but he sees it as a good thing. I see this as like as an absolute terrible thing. And people like Novogratz are going to blow these scams like Ripple and Ethereum and EOS and whatever else he mentioned, decentralized Uber coins. They could pump them into trillions of dollars. And he could be proven correctly that this will be the biggest bubble the world has ever seen. The thing is, none of this technology is any useful. And when it ends, guys like him will find a way to weasel out and become, the next chief of, government-controlled tokenized industrialization or something, right? He's not going to be blamed for pumping the bubble. He's going to be somehow cheerleaded this insanity when it's all said and done, and people lose billions and billions of dollars. I would say I don't have that much respect for him at the moment. I thought it was a disgrace of an interview of everything that he said.
Right, and we will be talking about Ripple in a little bit, but interesting. Jimmy, what did you think about this story?
Well, I made a tweet yesterday that said ICOs are a gullibility and integrity test. Are you willing to believe X if you can make money off of it? And a lot of billionaires, a lot of really rich people I found will believe almost anything in order to make money. And this is the frustrating thing. Money gets a lot of respect in this industry. And I'm not really sure why, because the people that should be getting the respect are the people that have executed, that have made stuff, that create things that are useful to people. It's not about, I raised $100 million. That proves I'm a success. No, that just proves that you're able to raise $100 million. You're a success when you actually make something that is useful to people, that adds to civilization, that builds things up. Instead, it's scammers are put on the same level as people that are building, and that's very frustrating to me. To me, Novogratz is one of those people that has a lot of money, but we don't really know how he got it. I haven't studied his history. It's just as likely that he's a scammer as he is like a really good creator of stuff, or he could be a banking rent seeker. A lot of those people end up as
work for Fortress, Jimmy. He worked for, which is one of the biggest hedge funds.
Right. So that to me is a lot of rent seeking and being able to move money around for money. I don't know. It seems like he's not one of those people that made his money by building something, and that's kind of frustrating to me that these are the people that the media holds up, and it's more a societal commentary than anything else, that money gets this level of respect that I don't think it necessarily deserves, because in a fiat money system, money flows to the rent seekers a lot of times just as much as it does the entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneurs deserve respect. The rent seekers do not. So hopefully Bitcoin is starting to change that. And, we have, because of sound money there and stuff, the culture hopefully will change towards respecting those that actually take risk and build things, instead of just people that happen to be born with a silver spoon in their mouth or happen to have the right government connections to be able to rent, seek, and make lots of money.
Thanks,
Yeah, Jimmy, and the ICO and the altcoins system is pretty much like the fiat system, because they're printing money out of thin air, just like the fiat system. It's not that different.
Yeah, what are you willing to believe in order to make money? And there's a lot of people that seem to be willing to believe anything in order to make money, and that's a very sad commentary on the integrity of the people in our space.
Giacomo, what was your thoughts on the piece, and also to Jimmy's point about builders? You definitely are a builder yourself, so I thought that was an interesting point.
Not really. I am a guy that bring pizza to builders. So I respect builders. I feed them, but I don't build much directly. And so yeah, I agree with Tone. I agree with Jimmy. And basically, it's literally true that there is a peak nonsense in this industry, if we can call
no, Giacomo. A peak could be $1 trillion away. Like we cannot say that definitively, that we're anywhere near the peak of stupid.
Oh no, okay, I agree. It's not that we are at the peak of this nonsense. We were probably going to see a lot of.
We keep making new highs, though. I'll with you.
But we are, so to speak, we are witnessing a huge amount of nonsense in this space. The problem is that there is a mix, very, very difficult to differentiate between legit innovation and a lot of noise. And one of the reasons that people in the chat and the Twitter comments that get annoyed that we insist in calling out scams like Ripple, like Ethereum. If we do that, it's not because we have fun with it. Yes, we do a little bit, but the real reason is that it's very important to distinguish between legit innovation and disruptive innovation like Bitcoin, but not only Bitcoin. Outside the crypto world, a lot of things have been disruptive. The internet have been disruptive. Tor, in his way, has been disruptive, and dark web. WikiLeaks have been disruptive. BitTorrent have been disruptive. There are a lot of disruptive things, not just Bitcoin. But among all the Bitcoin useless clones, there is nothing disruptive. There is only hype, rent seeking. So people that is trying to leverage the hype around Bitcoin in order to profit of ignorance and information asymmetry. And that's not just ICOs and altcoins, but also, and here I'm anticipating other news, also private blockchain consortiums. So it's all the same things. It's people that is just that is watching a new innovation coming along and is trying to make profit out of pure hype riding.
Interesting. Absolutely. I guess to sum it up, at least on my thoughts, there's been manipulation in all asset classes. It's in his best interest. It's interesting what he's saying. And to your point, Giacomo, I couldn't agree more, which is that there's what you said, noise in the ecosystem. And with him talking like this as well, and everybody else, and it's just creating more noise. It's interesting how, yesterday finally, and luckily we can keep discussing that while we follow it, of Clayton coming out with the statements of finally, that Bitcoin is the only non-security, ICOs being the securities. But in the end of the day, it's just leading to more confusion. And with more confusion, then in the space, the vast majority of people are just not going to understand the difference between Bitcoins and the alts. And I think that all 3 or 4 of us get in trouble on Twitter for trying to defend, and also in this live chat, Bitcoin and calling scams. But in the end of the day, there is a clear division, obviously, and there needs to be a clear division in people's minds. But with more news like this, correct to your point, Tone, I think that it's only going to get more and more confusing. If you guys agree or not. But United States cryptocurrency regulators show lawyers a unified front. So following up on some news, kind of not really. So as it says, quote, facing the crowd of 200 now silent lawyers, the regulators seem steeled to present a united front, even if the audience members' comments fell on deaf ears. My take of the story was that all they're saying is that they addressed the lawyers in New York City and they're saying that they've got their act together. I wish that they said that they're holding the lawyers responsible for a good part of this, but they didn't say that. Anyways, I'll go back to you again, Tone. What did you think about this story and what they're saying, especially in light of what Clayton said yesterday?
I actually just saw that title. Michael De Castillo, he used to write for CoinDesk. He's a pretty good writer, but it's funny. I don't know if it's an ironic title or not. I just seen the title. I read the story. I didn't see anything united in that story. It seemed to me like the U.S. regulators are still, not on the same page and not really cooperating and continue to be incredibly slow as to just, like Jay Clayton has to, in some interview, say ICOs are securities. And then when the interviewer says, can we get something? Like, have you guys said this definitively? And his answer was, well, I thought I just did. No, that's not definitively. Like you're saying it in an interview. Like, how about making it clear what ICOs are? So I didn't get any kind of, clear direction or cohesion between these regulators by reading that story. That was just my take on it.
Jimmy, what did you think?
Kind of what Tone said. It's but like the least interesting thing to me in this space is what regulators are saying about us. I'd rather talk about the actual innovation that's happening in Bitcoin itself. And like what some rent-seeking bureaucrat is saying in order to set themselves up for further bribes in the future is really just their business. And it frustrates me how much ink gets spilled and how many trees, well, digital trees, I guess, get burned in stories like this. Those poor bits that have to host this crap. Maybe it matters, maybe it doesn't. All of this is noise, in my opinion, and they'll do whatever, but Bitcoin will survive. That's what I think.
Jimmy, no, I'm 100% with you when it comes to Bitcoin, right? But this regulation is not going to be touching Bitcoin. This regulation is going to be touching altcoins, and I am always neck deep in arguments with, I don't know, every week it's another coin. This week it's Ripple. Last week it was Digibyte. The week before, I think it was Verge. And next week it'll probably be Ethereum again, right? Like some of them are revolving, like Ripple and Ethereum, and the rest come and go based on their pump and dump cycles. So yeah, it relates to them. But Jimmy is 100% right. This Bitcoin is above all of this.
I will object, Tone, that Jimmy is right, even if it doesn't relate to Bitcoin directly, because the end of the story is the same regardless of the topic. So for Bitcoin, the end of the story is that Bitcoin doesn't care what the regulator says by definition, by design, at least if it's going to be successful. For altcoins and ICOs token, the end of the story is that they die whether the regulator says one thing or the other, because if the regulators end to say that a regulated security can be just created and sold to the public without any kind of regulation, that's fine. I mean, I want to kiss that regulator. That's the best. But people will realize that they don't need complex and inefficient systems like the pseudo cryptocurrency ones. They can just open up a JavaScript Node.js website with a nice graphic interface and sell on a spreadsheet their securities without any kind of decentralization circles. So if the regulators end up saying that all these ICO shit is okay, then the technologies that are now used that pretend to be decentralized will die off to more centralized and more efficient and more easy technologies. If they say that the laws still apply, which I don't like, and so these guys still have to be regulated, then these altcoin platforms are not decentralized enough to survive. So it's interesting that in the end, if we follow logic, what the regulators say will not make, of course, in the long run, any different for any kind of any of these projects. Of course, for a trader in the short run, that makes a lot of difference. Like one position of the regulator can change the bullish into bearish outlook of a single shitcoin in 1 minute. So if I was a trader, which I'm not, I would not consider this noise, because this can frame the narrative for the next 2 or 3 months about shitcoins. But in the long run, I agree with Jimmy that this doesn't matter. Altcoins are going to die regardless.
I agree with you, Giacomo. To note, Tim?
No, I just had a good point.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. This is for everybody to know, it's in front of the Bar Association. And just to note, that is a very powerful association in the United States of America. It is an association. It's not a government entity, but Bar Association is absolutely important. I agree with you, Giacomo. There's 2 interesting points on what you said as well. Speaking on this panel, it says that they were providing their perspectives on cryptocurrencies, underlying blockchain, and ICOs, but it doesn't differentiate between Bitcoin and cryptos. It's that blanket term, cryptos. And to your point at the end of the piece, yes, it talks about stifling innovation. And yes, and if lots of regulatory action comes down or doesn't, I truly believe absolutely it will affect the markets, to be determined on what way it affects prices for each one of the coins. But for more institutional investors to get involved, I think it's important to follow it, especially what these lawyers are going to be saying. And again, I don't see any of these lawyers talking about coming down on the lawyers that structured the deals for these scamming ICOs, either. So I think it's actually, the story is kind of dangerous in its potential ramifications. But Tony, you look like you want to battle me on that, or?
No. I was just gonna say that, like, eventually, sooner or later, these regulators are gonna realize that the only innovation in ICOs is the siphoning of money from unqualified investors.
Let's hope. And to Jimmy's points and Giacomo, that the alts will die, I agree. But in the meantime, we'll see. So moving on to R3. Blockchain firm R3 is running out of money, sources say. It's pretty simply put on the title. So if a little background again on R3, they had taken off when they, and then they launched Corda. And a bunch of blue chips of their members left the consortium. Guys, tell me if I'm getting this incorrectly. However, they raised a bunch of money. And just one quick thing before we jump into the story, I was having a little fun with this. They'd raised 106 million, but look at this. Very recently, they needed a $5 million cash infusion, which shows exactly that point, that they very desperately needed a cash infusion to be able to try to keep things going. So on that point, just going, I'll switch this one up. I'll go to you, Giacomo. Is the only way that blockchain for banks going to work if, let's go back to our favorite Ripple, you can keep printing money? And what do you think of the story?
What I think of the story is it's bad. People should not feel good about other people in disgrace, but actually, it's very funny. Like during Consensus the last year, not this one, this guy was leaving the stage to go directly to the roof of the Marriott Hotel to take his helicopter from the roof of the Marriott Hotel, and he was in New York City, like where you're selling to Wall Street. Where the fuck are you going with an helicopter from the Marriott Hotel? So probably the burn rate of R3 was a little bit over the top. But so this is funny. Also, it's funny to imagine to write a post addressed to Mike Hearn about the resolution of the R3 experiment anytime soon. So the story is funny to me, but I think that the banks will eventually use Bitcoin, use the blockchain, at least in 3 ways. The first, more obvious way is buying Bitcoin on behalf of not technical traditional investors. Banks will do that, in my opinion, eventually, sooner or later. Second, there is some possible use of the Bitcoin blockchain for transparency purposes, like there is a very nice standard called open timestamps, you can easily, in a very scalable and privacy compliant way, you can easily use the Bitcoin blockchain as a trustless timestamping solution, and to a certain degree as a proof of existence and proof of let's say, not alteration, which is not trivial, but can be used maybe by financial institution to prove reserve or consistency of the records. You don't need to build a pseudo blockchain, of course, and you don't need 100 millions in order to build a fake blockchain, which is not a blockchain. You just need to pay a few euros for a transaction to just broadcast an open timestamps commitment. So there will be ways in which banks will use the blockchain. The last way possible, the third way that I can imagine, is banks will probably leverage some kind of innovation that will just fall down like a waterfall effect from Bitcoin. So since Bitcoin is going to change many things, and so people will have a hardware wallet with them in 2 years from now, a lot of people will have hardware wallets. So banks will be able maybe to leverage this kind of widespread adoption of public key cryptography, secure elements, or maybe just if you imagine, if people is going to research zero knowledge proof for Bitcoin, so for confidential transactions, bullet proofs, and stuff like that, or in Monero, or even in Zcash, the fact that these cryptocurrencies exist is itself advancing zero knowledge proof cryptography. And some kind of financial institution in traditional not blockchain world, they could leverage some kind of innovation. So it's just like second stage, second level, two-stage innovation that they can leverage. So the question is, can a core banking database, can it be made better, more secure and more transparent using cryptography? Yes. Does this business opportunity, is this business opportunity worth enough to allow Mr. Rutter to take a helicopter every time he leaves the stage of a convention? Probably not.
Doesn't seem like prudent startup usage of money. Jimmy, what did you think of the story? What Giacomo's response is? And if I'm allowed to add a third part, just it seems as if they've been pivoting, but unsuccessfully, and now they're finally falling apart. So, again, what was your take?
All right, so I'm gonna need to switch hats for this one. Oh man, I am so happy. I can't tell you how much schadenfreude I am feeling right now. I mean, we all knew that, these like enterprise blockchain things were, I've been going on about this for months now. It's a lot of snake oil, guys. It doesn't really get you anything. I think Safety in like a year ago, he was pointing out that R3 doesn't actually use a blockchain, and they changed their Twitter profile to say blockchain inspired. I just looked it up now. There's no mention of blockchain even in their Twitter account. It's all a different thing. And one of those guys, I think Richard Gendall Brown, who works there, he tweeted at me after I had done my piece with Joe Lubin and railed against enterprise solutions that don't mean anything, aren't doing anything, and are just complete buzzword bingo. He said something like, well, Jimmy made the best argument for why you should be using Corda, though he doesn't know it. And I think what he's implying there is that they don't use blockchain at all. And they realized a while ago, okay, none of this makes any sense for any of this stuff that we're purporting to do. It sounds like, though, that they've realized a little too late. I've been in a lot of startups where, they make stupid expenditures. This seems like one of them. A lot of executives get these big heads and they go, okay, well, I'm important because I've hired 30 people. Well, no, it doesn't matter at all if you haven't built anything. In fact, you're just wasting investor money, and you should be tried and prosecuted for like frivolous expenses that you're spending stuff on. It's kind of ridiculous that they're doing stuff like what Giacomo said, that like helicopter ride out of the Marriott, that makes me so angry, because this is exactly the kind of behavior that people engage in when they're not spending their own money, they're spending someone else's money. And the thing is, R3 is going to look like a bunch of like frugal nuns compared to what some of these ICOs are going to do, because they have way more money and way less restrictions. They're like a helicopter ride off the top of the Marriott's going to look like charity compared to like what some of these guys are going to do, just like buying whatever the hell they want and like properties and embezzling money all over the place. Just watch. There's just way too much money, way too easy access to that money, and way too little controls around these things, that this sort of behavior where you just sort of spend money before it all runs out, and it's going to turn quick. It's going to be slow, and then it'll turn all of a sudden, where a ton of these companies are just going to be like, where the hell did our money go? Didn't we raise like 100 or 200 million? And then find out, oh man, the CEO just got paid like $100 million bonus, like something like that is going to happen. And there's going to be massive scandals, probably invite some regulation around it. But I mean, this is human nature. This is what happens when you don't properly control for things. And it's going to be an expensive lesson for a lot of people.
Yeah, and
if I may add just a last quick comment, somebody could argue that this kind of money disappearing, like where are our millions, is better than the one that will happen with ICO token sales, because in this case they are scamming banks, like while in the other case they are scamming, let's say, poor, innocent, illiterate people. But I mean, I'm not even so sure that it's so different, because right now you're scamming banks and innovation managers. In the token ICO case, you are scamming people who got rich, mostly people who got rich by chance, investing in a random altcoin at the right moment without any understanding. So in both situations, I will not cry so much when these people will realize their money.
No, and it's personal responsibility. You got to let stupid people be stupid, and let them suffer their own consequences. Sometimes that's the only way people learn. Yeah, they'll go crying to daddy government, and in a sense, like the banks will have more say among regulators to say, hey, you know what, like these people screwed us or whatever. But I suspect half of these people are like the same people anyway. The people that are entertaining the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance are the same people that are investing in ICOs and just want some of that juice, by rent, like some enterprise version of rent-seeking ICO, basically. So, yeah.
And not just, an inappropriate CEO, but to be honest, I don't understand why the board didn't step in and, kick out the CEO. And the end of the day, it's very powerful venture capital firms. You have, again, wasn't it way over $104 million? And yet they allowed him to continue this nonsense. And even just one last point, and then I'll turn to you, Tone, is that it says right here, the former employee said that, they're 10x short, and it's laughable how terribly they're doing it. The managing director disputed the claims, and, so there's, this looks utterly inappropriate from a corporate governance standpoint. But Tone, you're also wearing a black hat. So like Jimmy, you're going to go at it.
No, I'm going to go the other way on this one. Look, I gave R3 a bunch of shit, like a lot of us did when they were pretending to be a blockchain company. When they scraped all things blockchain out of their pitches, I was perfectly okay with it. And like their biggest competitor is Ripple. And Ripple is so much scammier than R3 because of that damn token. Like I would much rather see Ripple disappear from our life and R3 still exist and provide this database to the banks. I'm actually a little disappointed because now it's going to be more R3 with no competition. Now the only competition is this Ethereum Alliance, which I don't think is real competition in this space, and Hyperledger. So IBM's Hyperledger is still quasi around, but now all of this has turned to Ripple. And like Leah, like you said in the lead, this is what happens when you don't print your own money out of thin air. you get, crushed by your competitor that gets to print money out of thin air, right? And according to Mike Novogratz, to tie all of our stories together, everyone should just print their own money out of thin air to pump this bubble.
Yeah, I will just add that I think that Ripple joined Hyperledger. So right now you have basically you have Ethereum Enterprise Alliance, Hyperledger with Ripple inside, and R3. So
and in that crypto scam Ripple episode that I did with Peter Todd, if my memory serves me right, Peter Todd was hired as a consultant by R3 to figure out if this Ripple token is any useful in any of this blockchain stuff. And that's where Peter Todd came up with this report, basically explaining what a scam Ripple is. So I guess one of the reasons why R3 is going down is because of Peter Todd's report, because if that report went the other way, R3 could have just invested in their competition by buying up a bunch of Ripple, and they would still have like $1 billion in funding.
Well, I have no sympathy for somebody that's like wasting money like this and trying to sell snake oil, no matter how scammier their competitors are. It's kind of like choosing, who you like the least.
Anyway, I think it's worth nothing. It's worth bringing up again what Ton said about Peter's involvement in this situation. So Peter Todd has been hired as a consultant for R3 at the beginning. This is actually one of the reason for the relatively early awareness of R3 SEV about the blockchain nonsense. So when other people were still searching for a private blockchain scheme, in R3 SEV, the awareness of the fact that you don't need a blockchain to do that stuff was already very, very high because of Peter's contribution. Sadly, Peter pointed out some kind of technical incompetence of Mike Hearn publicly, and then basically bring to a very, very, let's say, quick end of the cooperation. But we can say that the Corda design, while it is scammy to present it as a blockchain, and R3 is still doing that. They don't do that anymore consistently, but sometimes they bring up blockchain buzzword again when it serves them. So they are not consistent.
Well, they were forced to bring back the blockchain buzzword because they were going to go out of business earlier. So they had to bring it back just to stay relevant. And clearly that wasn't enough. You needed to print your own security.
Yeah. Anyway, it's very interesting to remember this story because, as you said, Tom, some of the money of R3 at least was used to pay Peter for that great report on the Ripple consensus model, which is something. The Ripple consensus model is something like, if we all agree and we never have a split chain, then we don't need a blockchain, which is actually true, while very optimistic.
Right. And yet, and that still doesn't explain why they need a token.
Not at all, not at all. And also, anyway, and then I stop, but I want to remember that the idea that Peter bring inside the Corda development very, very early, that was the proof chain idea, so the client-side validation idea, is still something Peter is working on, mainly on Bitcoin-based asset context, and it's still something that Peter believes could bring some benefit, and it's very interesting itself. The business shell around R3 is very, very, very scammy, very, very snake oil, very, very inconsistent, and very expensive. But few of the core intuitions of Corda are actually interesting.
Yeah. You guys jogged my brain a little. I do this. You're right, actually. And from a business, to take a little different route, I guess, business and venture capital perspective, one, you're correct, Giacomo, that they are part of Hyperledger, who took, Ripple's part of Hyperledger, who took their clients. And, again, the venture capital the companies who backed them didn't step in, it seems as if, right? And apparently here, it's saying that a prominent figure in the blockchain financial world Allegedly, R3 was engaged in open washing. So even the devs were mistrusting R3, et cetera. And at the end of the day, I would relate this back to the beginning when you were talking about the helicopter and finish it off with full circle, which is that most startups fail because I personally believe the founder, the CEO, is the one that's supposed to lead the company to success. And sometimes it's not, to your guys' points, it's not even if you have a good product or not, or, it's, are you betting on the jockey or the horse? It's kind of the old phrase. And I'll also use that because Belmont Stakes is tomorrow. And typically you're supposed to bet on the jockey, both, right? The jockey being the CEO, the horse being the company, both need to be fantastic. But in the end of the day, if the CEO can't pivot accordingly, can't iterate based on what's happening, if they're not able to keep up in the market, and if their ego is getting in the way, which it seems probably was most pressing to this situation, and therefore potentially without humility wasn't able to listen to their very powerful and brilliant and resource-filled venture capital backers. Last point, because that 5 million, correct, was from a different firm, then yeah, it doesn't surprise me that they're going to go this way. Unfortunately, Tone is correct that printing a token like Ripple doesn't hurt for the expansion, but I will stop.
Well, so can I just say something? Because I as a VC, I wish what you said about VCs are all true, that they're like hyper vigilant over their over all of their investments, and like look at comb through all of the irregularities of whatever. That's not how it works, right? Like most of them put in some money and just sort of hope for the best. A lot of them don't even want board seats because that asks too much of them, and they're the capital, right? They're not the operators. And I imagine that's what's kind of happened here. Is they managed to raise some money. The guy can probably talk a really good game. I've noticed this about startup CEOs. They're really good at convincing people to give them money, but that's their only skill. And good for him, I guess. I suppose that's what ICOs are doing at a more massive scale. But don't expect the board to step in and do all that stuff. Most of them just don't care enough.
Yeah, I'll just close out on this. All of us on this panel were right about R3 from day one, and we're all going to be right about Ripple from day one as well. It's just going to take a little bit longer because they have $800 billion to work with.
And correct, actually, Jimmy. Thanks for pointing that out. That's true, and that's why 9 out of 10 fail. And venture capital firms know that from their business model, and they hope for the 1 out of 10 that is able to come back with their multiple that keeps them running in that fund. So yeah, you're right. Maybe I've just had some hard ass VCs that I've had to work with in the past, but correct. Now on to sharding. I hate saying this word. So Stop and Decrypt he wrote that great Medium article. Now we're in Hacker Noon, which is actually still through Medium, but an interesting publication within it. And he has expanded everything that he started off doing in response. My understanding is to people coming back with various sides of the argument. And I will turn this straight over to you, Giacomo, because again, this is a bit over my head, but please tell, it's also quite long. Please explain to us, if you can, what he's come back and added, as well as just a small recap, if possible, on just the piece as a whole.
So do this because actually these are very, very rich in information. So not like
Giacomo,
I would urge anybody. Do you hear me now?
A little choppy.
Oh, fuck. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's on my end or on Giacomo's end.
I'm pretty sure it's on Giacomo's end because I heard that too.
Giacomo's frozen. Jimmy, you want to take over just for? Oh no, Giacomo, you look good. Try it.
Okay, maybe if Jimmy's connection is better, I can just try to. I can leave you this very, very hard work to comment the article as you wish. Is it better now?
Yeah,
Yes.
it is better.
Okay, so the article is very long, but is simple. Is not very technical. It can be kind of understood. It takes a lot of time, a lot of dedication, because it's long, it's rich of information, is a very very complete. Is not easy to compress it anymore. So I would suggest anybody to read it, to read the first article. I try to just give a very, very quick impression of what is written in it. So in the previous article, Stop and Decrypt was basically explaining that when people create alternative blockchains with every computation on the blockchain, like Ethereum, with storage on the blockchain, and with fast blocks every few seconds, and all this stuff, they can show off that their blockchain is faster because they have more blocks, or more powerful because they have bigger blocks, or more expressive and more flexible because they can do computation and storage directly on the blockchain. But this doesn't come without cost. This comes at the cost that basically people will not be able to download and synchronize their node with the blockchain. So basically they will not be able to validate independently the state of the blockchain without the help of someone else. So this kind of thing that everybody was pointing out since years, since the very beginning of Ethereum, like people were saying, this stuff will not scale. It will be so easy to make it unscalable and unverifiable. Right now, nobody runs a full node. So people were starting to create a lot of noise around this notion, like, yeah, but you don't really need a full node. You can just discharge the whole story of the blockchain. So the first article of Stop and Decrypt was basically debunking this notion, because it was showing that based on current trends, so not just imagining numbers or not just accusing somebody of something out of thin air, but using existing numbers and existing trends, the Ethereum blockchain is behaving in a way that will make not just to synchronize with past history, but to stay synchronized with a normal hardware and normal collection, basically impossible for normal users. So users will end up trusting completely a centralized party. And so all the point of this world computer is just everybody doing computation on the Ethereum Foundation computer, trusting them. So this second, basically many people, but especially Vitalik Buterin himself, the enfant prodige of Ethereum, answered with a lot of technical terminology. And this is also very interesting. You know, again, I will bring up another anecdote from Consensus 2016. And it was the moment in which Gavin Andresen said that, in his opinion, Craig Wright was Satoshi. And Vitalik answered in an epic way, very, very correct way. And Vitalik said, if you have something very simple to say, and you bring up a very, very complex way to say it, there are good chances that you are trying to obfuscate the message because you are lying. And he said that regarding Craig Wright fake signature on Satoshi on First Block. But it's the same if you look at Vitalik's answer to this article by Stop and Decrypt. So the first article by Stop and Decrypt is very, very long. Don't make any mistake. It's not short, but it's very, very simple and easy to understand in layman terms. Every answer by Vitalik is like a buzzword festival. It's like, yeah, but if you shard on top of the, so a lot of empty technical terminology that is very, very useful to obfuscate the main points of difficult by Vitalik. So in this follow-up article, Stop and Decrypt is basically breaking down in simple and systematic logic steps what Vitalik is answering to him, basically trying to debunk the myth of sharding. Sharding is basically the idea that you don't need to validate all the global status. You can just validate a chunk, a shard of the state, and somehow you can later resynchronize your knowledge with the other nodes without everybody having to download and to verify everything. So this sharding idea is not itself stupid. It's something very, very interesting. In a way, side chains are a form of sharding in a way. And we could say that Lightning Network itself and layer 2 itself is a very degenerate case of sharding and pruning. But the way that Vitalik was assuming sharding to work was basically, again, buzzword based. And so if you read these, you can actually stop listening to complex words and trying to figure out the numbers following very, very small and discrete logical steps. So I'm not going to try to synthesize it further, but please do read it. Do read it more than one time. And I don't know if Jimmy is able to try to synthesize even more the content, but it's very, very difficult to do that in a way which is not basically reading the article.
That was very helpful. Thank you, Giacomo. And yes, I'll turn that right over to Jimmy.
Yeah, I think what Giacomo was saying was absolutely right. It's basically an argument between Stop and Decrypt and Vitalik, and he basically takes Vitalik's tweaks and tells you what's wrong with it. And I think Giacomo's point about obfuscation as a way to sound smart when you are doing a public debate of any kind is generally a really bad signal. If you can't explain something simply and you aren't making any sense, that means you are losing. You're getting wrecked. And Vitalik's getting wrecked. He's bringing up points that don't make any sense. And Tone knows this from like debating like Ripple people. They just bring up random shit and see what sticks as a way to debate you. And this is a popular way to debate on Twitter. For me, this is an excellent heuristic to know when somebody doesn't know what they're talking about. Is they bring up irrelevant points and they're slipping and like a snake and to just not get their head crushed or something like that. And that's what this article is like, right? Like it's a Vitalik just sort of like slipping in and out, trying to bring out irrelevant points that don't matter. And you know, I hear all these Ethereum fanboys saying, "Oh, Vitalik's wrecking Stop and Decrypt. He completely destroyed him." No, he didn't. Actually, if you're actually technical and you read what he's saying, it's very obvious that he's trying to bring up stuff, and he's more practicing in rhetoric than anything else. So yeah, I read the article. Basically, Ethereum's not in very good shape. And I think everybody in Ethereum knows that. Their blockchain is growing way too fast. They're getting all sorts of irrelevant uses that aren't really at the core of, I'm not even really sure what the core of what they're doing is, but whatever it is that they're doing, it's not scalable. It's way too expensive. There's you know, it's way too centralized. And like all of these things are things that we've been pointing out for like over a year now, is that they are becoming the centralized entity. They're, it's kind of like Animal Farm to me, right? Like it's a bunch of animals that think that they're rebelling against the current system, but then they find out their master is exactly like their old master right at the end. They can't tell the difference between the pigs and the people, and this is the process of doing it. And basically, if you criticize Ethereum in any way, you are apparently like, you know, like you're two legs bad or something. I don't know. Whatever it is, that's the direction I'm seeing Ethereum go in, and it was utterly predictable. As soon as you add something centralized, it goes in this direction. And how long before Vitalik decrees like a 3-year plan and, you know, starts, you know, I mean, he already has probably all the money he needs, but, you know, I'm sure some sort of weird dynamic is going to occur that we see really only in like socialist countries and fiat places with lots of rent seeking. I mean, yeah, it's really sad, but it was utterly predictable.
Thank you, Giacomo and Jimmy.
Last very quick comment is that reading this article is not all interesting if you want to understand what's the matter with Ethereum and what are the problems with Ethereum. Like maybe you're just, okay, we trust the Bitcoin morning brief so much, we don't verify. And if this guy said that Ethereum is bad, we don't even read it. No, this is very important even to understand the same challenges on Bitcoin. So Ethereum here is used like a symbol, like an extreme bad case in order to figure out some kind of trade-offs that we also have to face on Bitcoin, even if in a more sensible way, because Bitcoin developers were aware of this trade-off since day one. So it's super important to read this in order to understand what kind of choices you have to make when you try to build something so decentralized.
Interesting. Yeah. It's good that at least in Bitcoin, we slow down and learn lessons from, especially when people are screwing up. But again, thank you, gentlemen, for deciphering the technicals for me. And Tone, I remember when we covered his first piece, which is there right underneath if anyone wants to click it, you had put in your tweet, I'm pretty sure, was Ethereum can't scale, was the way that you introduced that piece. So follow up on this piece. What were your thoughts, especially after Jimmy and Giacomo put it into layman's terms? But you understand technical, but I don't.
They pretty much explained it. Like, I'm not gonna. I also like this was way too long for me to actually read it. I'll try to get to it. I'll try and read it over. Stopped and Decrypt is doing great work. Giacomo and Jimmy took a look at this. Clearly, they are agreeing. I'm looking at it from this perspective. Man, I had a bunch of things to say earlier, but I've been like, again, my Twitter feed is exploding right now because of the whole Ripple nonsense. And that's what they said. Like, these people, like when Jimmy said, they're just throwing out anything that hope that it sticks. Like, one guy will talk about how Ethereum is the world computer. Another guy is going to talk about how Ethereum is this. Another guy is going to talk about how Ethereum is money. Another guy is going to argue with him that Ethereum can be money because it's gas. But like, everyone wants Ethereum to be everything, whatever makes them happy, because they're holding the asset, right? They're holding the security. And I'm going to be calling them securities from now on, because the SEC has told me that they are securities because they were created out of thin air by a common entity, like Ripple, like Ethereum, like a lot of the others. So, and all of these efforts are not going to scale. And Vitalik is being exposed for it. And again, Stop and Decrypt, keep doing great work, man. And this goes to show you, right? This is the other thing that I was going to say. It's so easy for us to ignore things like OneCoin and BitConnect. They're obvious Ponzi's. And the armies of believers of OneCoin and BitConnect are not much different than the army of believers of Ethereum and Ripple. The difference is, from our side, it's very easy to like look at BitConnect in 10 seconds and just call it a Ponzi scheme. You don't need to spend, a year of your life over the last 3 to 4 years trying to explain this to the layman person. It's a lot easier to explain why BitConnect is a scam, why OneCoin is a scam to the layman person. It's a lot harder to explain why Ethereum and Ripple are not that much different from BitConnect. It's a lot harder because of the complexity in those systems versus something like BitConnect, which is why people like Stop and Decrypt now have to write 2 articles that are like Michael Lewis style, like 8-page, to 10-page articles, trying to explain this nonsense that Ethereum has inside of it. And for Bitcoin, it's completely the other way around, because you can't prove its faults, because so much work was put into it to make sure that it doesn't have these problems.
Right. Thank you, everybody. And also, since you evoked the SEC and securities, let's not forget that there currently is a lawsuit against Ripple for its unregistered security issues. So that will be fun.
That's going to be interesting. I really want to have a few lawyers on to talk about that case specifically, because it's going to be very interesting, because that's not a case that's brought upon by the SEC against Ripple. It's a case brought upon by individuals against Ripple. So the fight for whether Ripple is or isn't a security might actually take place outside of the SEC, which is going to be kind of funny, because if I was the plaintiff in this case, accusing Ripple of being a security, SEC would be my number one witness to the stand to prove my case. And then the SEC would be forced to make a decision on Ripple if there was a way to like subpoena the SEC for their expertise on the case by the plaintiffs of the class action on Ripple being a security. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how this would work, but I really need to get a few lawyers on to discuss this.
Right. And then we can finally have case law. All right. So on to this tweet. So Jimmy, it seems to me that Luke is pretty much pointing out that Blue Matt's thing isn't that new. It's a bit older, but miners had no interest in adopting it at that point.
Yeah, so I'm looking at BIP 22, and he did author something back then. It was a change to get block template. And you know that obviously didn't go anywhere, and he did this like years ago. So if I look at it, it's like 2012. He brought it up back in 2012, and there's like a bunch of pool extensions and all that stuff. Generally, as a coder, if you see that your stuff didn't get in and somebody else's is getting traction, this tends to be kind of the reaction that you have. I get Luke Dash's, he's a little bit miffed, obviously, because he had the same idea 6 years ago and he proposed it. No one really paid attention to it. Miners didn't do it. I will say though that Matt Corallo has a lot of cred with the miners just from his fiber work and making sure that it decreases orphan rates significantly and things like that. So I think he may have more success. Luke was writing probably mostly for his own pool, Eligius, which was competing with a lot of them. So I think maybe back then it was a different era. That said, the main thing is I have little confidence in this while Bitmain retains greater than 50%. So they have more than 50% of mining manufacturing equipment. I don't think they actually control more than 50% of miners. He may just be being pessimistic.
He's being, I can maybe explain that because Bitmain supplies like pools like BTC.com pool.
Yeah.
And they also supply BitClub. Like Bitmain has a lot of a lot of like weight over pools that exclusively use their equipment.
Yeah. So, I mean, the nice thing about Matt's thing is if there's a pool that offers the separation of the work versus the actual variance reduction, then they will get more popular just naturally because people do care about getting transactions in, and they can make extra revenue by having their own fee, like figuring out which transactions to include and based on fees and RBF and all that stuff. That's not a trivial algorithm, and anyone that's like a business opportunity in a sense, because instead of doing like two blocks in a row real quick that Bitmain does a lot, you can optimize that and make it like worth a lot more if you have a get work server that can sort of predict where things are going to go, and this can be enabled with weak blocks and things that Matt's including. So given that, I think naturally the better hash protocol will gain momentum over Stratum. I mean, that said, it might not be like right away, but certainly over time, that's the general trend it's going to go to because it's going to make them more money. So I see this as something that is, a little bit pessimistic, but I think he recognizes what an improvement this is. So, I like Luke. So yeah.
Thanks, Jimmy. And this does seem like a good follow-up from yesterday.
And he's got a great picture in the background if you want to show his Twitter
I see you, Tone.
Backdrop. Yeah, right
there we go.
Jimmy should be there somewhere.
That was hot.
What? Right under him, yeah.
There he is. See, Jimmy's the Jedi. I'm a bounty hunter.
You kind of looks like Jimmy, like you're about to take his arm off.
Yeah, maybe.
All right, Giacomo, what did you think about this?
Jimmy said it all. Basically, it could be a marketing problem. Of course, I mean, the Musk proposal is more advanced than the Nuke proposal, but the reason is because there is more interest now than it was. I mean, Luke is very smart, and sometimes he is so smart and he is a little bit ahead of the time. And when he proposed all that, people was not really as concerned as now. About possible mining related attack vectors. Now people, after the New York Agreement attack and after Bcash switching in power and Bitmain and bleed the backdoor and everything, people ASICs boost covered ASIC boost. People now is scared about mining as an attack surface. And so this other time around, the proposal that Luke already imagined a lot of time ago, but not only Luke, I mean, also people, there was people talking in the mailing list in 2013 about my English was too bad back then in order to properly read everything. But I remember people discussing about changing the way, basically deactivating mining pools, changing the way that you can distribute the dividends. But then it was a bad idea because pools are okay because they encourage little hashers to join, reducing variance. But the problem is the block template. So this other time around, is possible that the marketing situation, the time to market is better than the first. I also agree with Jim that I hope and I think that Luke is too pessimistic in imagining Bitmain controlling directly more than 50% of the hashing power. That's not impossible, but I think that's unlikely. For sure, they control close to 80% of ASIC's production, which is bad enough because it allows you to indirectly control the mining pools. But yeah, probably they don't control. I mean, Luke has an agenda here. It's a very, very honest and declared and overt agenda. But he thinks that the mining situation is so screwed up that we need to organize a proof of work change. I don't agree with that. I'm very scared about that prospect because I think it's super difficult to coordinate it and super easy to infiltrate this kind of change by external powers. So is just discussing this innovation from the point of view of his perception of the situation, which is very pessimistic. But it's good to have pessimistic developers. I mean, we are lucky to have very, very pessimistic developers because they will prepare for the worst case scenario, and hopefully we are not going to need it, not all of it.
That's a very interesting point. Yeah, and again, right, to Bitmain, you know, we've been covering a lot of stories recently about potential innovations that could challenge that, even, right, GMO a couple days ago. So yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you guys. And Princess Leia is missing from here, by the way. And Solo just came out. I'm sure that Tone, you know, is going to watch that.
I think Elizabeth Stark is the Princess Leia in there, no?
Oh, cool. Okay, good. At least females are represented. I think I only, there we go. Okay, good. Kind of gender equality ish here. Okay, love it. All right, moving on. Just Jimmy, really quick note on, we mentioned it at the beginning, but your white hat is here, but I know I'm going to grab the black hat there. Oh, good.
Nice screen cap.
So just one last comment on this, and everybody who's watching, you can find it with Naomi Brockwell. Are you going to be able to put it on your show as well, off-chain?
I don't know. I just sort of linked to hers, and it's her show, and you know, Chris is on there and all that. Yeah. So I just left it there. But I have a link to it on my Twitter. We'll put it on the show notes later. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
It's in the show notes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, but basically, I was debating Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash with Chris. We actually found a surprising amount of common ground. I think he and I both agreed that Craig Wright is an absolute scammer, and he's about as confused as I am why anybody in Bitcoin Cash, associates with that guy. Similar thing with Roger Ver calling it Bitcoin Cash Bitcoin. He was like, that doesn't make really any sense, and that's his opinion or whatever. But yeah, we talked about a lot of different issues. I think I articulated my position. I don't know if I really represent an entire side or anything. But yeah, we talked about a lot of different things. A lot of Bitcoin Cash people are already mad at me, which I take as a badge of pride. That's fine. One of the things I said towards the end of the interview is that, civility doesn't really matter. A lot of people seem to think that it's this magical thing that we have a right to or are entitled to. But local volatility actually ends up making you more anti-fragile, and forcing civility is reducing social volatility. And what happens then is that you have these black swan events that actually absolutely crush everything. So I don't think calls for civility are necessary or needed. I actually think it's healthy. And whatever fights that people get into on Twitter, well, that means less like drastic things like kidnapping people or murdering them or making death threats or something like that. I'd much rather have people fight on Twitter than do that. So anyway, check it out. It was a fun interview. You could probably put it at 1.5x speed at the very least.
Awesome. Thanks, Jimmy. Weather report?
Yeah, this is the weather. It looks like it keeps clearing really, really fast. So I think we're okay. I think the average amount of transactions per block tends to be in the 3,000 range. And we see that, that's around where it spikes up. So that's kind of how you can tell is if it spikes up to 3,000 and it crashes down, like all the way to zero, that means that we had like a real actual full block. Most of the other spikes that are under that are going to probably, unless they have like some crazy multi-sig or something, are mostly going to be less. And they're not really full. So if you're willing to wait a few hours, 1 Satoshi per byte will get you in today. But if you need it in the next block or so, 2, 3, 4 should be fine. Yeah, but it's all that stuff that came in over the weekend completely gone now. It's clear and good to go. Leah, you're muted.
I am muted. Okay, thank you, Jimmy. And Tone, TA?
Hey guys, wow, this show is a little longer than usual. It's all good though. All right, let's do some TA. So I am in Dublin. I'm already in Dublin. The workshop is tomorrow. Looks like I got 10 people. That's great. I was hoping for at least 10 people for the workshop. So it looks like we have that. It's still possible to get in there tomorrow, but you're not going to know the address unless you actually register. Try not to keep these things totally public. So check that out. And also the Learn Trading section is now here in education. So you can also go ahead and check that out. Click on Learn Trading. And I need to expand on it some more. And speaking of trading, let's take a look at the price. Now, Bitcoin had a little bit of a boost yesterday. It took a little bit of a dive earlier this morning, but it's already coming back. But not much is changing, right? The volume continues to decelerate, though this is Bitstamp. One exchange isn't, representative of the whole. So you do want to look at the aggregate volume or the average volume across exchanges, but not much is changing. It looks like we're sitting at 76.50. It remains a bearish candle. We still have 2 days in this candle. And until I see anything seriously change, I will continue to refer to the current candle as the equivalent of the candle that took place. Let me get this straight here. Back here in August 25th of 2014, was the red candle after the green candle that closed under the 50-week moving average. Now that red candle was a little bit more bearish than the current candle, followed by 2 flat weeks. So we are looking at a flat week here. Let's see if we can get a couple of more flat weeks for the moving averages to kind of catch up. And let's see what happens if the 7-week crosses below the 50-week. Because remember, the last time that happened, the last time the 7-week moving average crossed below the 50-week moving average, Bitcoin pretty much fell from $480 down to under 200, right? There was like a 70% drop in the price of Bitcoin once the 7-week crossed under the 50. And the only time it crossed back above was when Bitcoin started going to the upside. So that's not a bad, doesn't seem to be that bad of a metric over the last couple of years. If we go to the prior bear market, the 7-week moving average never even crossed below the 30-week, let alone the 50-week, never crossed, which is why people that continue to compare the current bear market to the early 2013 period, I believe are grossly incorrect because the 7-week moving average never even crossed the 30. And as you can see, we are a few weeks away from having it cross the 50. So let's see what happens there as we move along. Let's go to the daily chart. Oh yeah, I've been updating some stuff for my workshop for tomorrow. Let me do this. And I gotta zoom in here. Yeah, I got a lot of stuff going on. I'm looking at the CMF. It's not great. It's still negative. The RSI is kind of neutral. I don't have the MACD up. We got our 9, and now we're stagnating. We're price flipping. And I mean, the good news for the bulls is that it is a cup and handle looking structure. But I would wait. I would wait for the price to go above the 30-day moving average. And at this point, I would wait for the price to break 8,000. And if the price can break 8,000, there is a possibility that it would go to the top of this channel that I have on the 12-hour chart. If we can break this red line, which is sitting at 7,800, if we can break this red line at 7,800, we can certainly go to the top of the channel. But the bear market is still with us. And the only way I would consider the end of a bear market is if we break prior high, but not in one swing. We would need to go to the top of this triangle, need to pull back down, make a higher low, then break out again, go above the $8,000 high, pull back to the $8,000 high, come back to the 9,000 area, pull back to 8,500. Like it would need to be slow and steady. And then eventually when we break above maybe 9.5, I'll turn bullish and I'll consider the end of the bear market. But for now, the bear market is still with us. The 4-hour chart, not very useful at all, not even gonna bother. I'd wait for the close above this dotted line at 77.65 before considering bullish trades. And the 1-hour chart looked very good if you were trading the sequential indicator, gave you a perfect 9 at the lows at 11 UTC time, which is probably about 5 in the morning Eastern. Again, it's the same line. Find the best fit line, looks like about 7,700 above that line. So if you look at across all time frames, it looks to me like, you know, trading above 7,800 could create enough bullish momentum to take you to 83, 84, maybe even 86. But until I see 7,800, I'm going to assume this thing is ready to roll over. That's pretty much it. It's the end of the week. We may get a 9 765. Oh, that'll be hard on gold. Nasdaq, it's dealing with the fact that the Nasdaq is on a daily 9, and let's see what happens on a weekly 8, coming off a daily 9, kind of trying to pick a direction. S&P is looking good, needs to get above 28, and that's pretty much it for me. And if you were in Dublin, maybe you can find me here. It's not that big of a city.
All right. Thanks so much, Tone. Jimmy, are you doing any other interviews today? Or you're in Rio next week. Sao Paulo. Sorry.
Sao Paulo next week. And I am going to do an AMA on this website later today. Forget what it's called, but it's on my Twitter, and basically just answer any questions about Bitcoin and whatever. So yeah, please ask questions there. It's not going to be a video, but it's sort of like a live chat thing. But then, yeah, I am going to Sao Paulo next week, and we'll be doing stuff from there. I'm going to try to do a show. We'll see. I'm not sure if I'll get on the morning brief, but I'll try to do shows. Yeah, other than that, it's nothing else for me.
Sounds good. Giacomo, plans?
No plans until the Lisbon conference, Building on Bitcoin. That will be the first time I leave diapers to get back to Bitcoin. Until then, I will stay around here. I have one very important clarification to make before we close the briefing, which is this: you have now in the chat a link to the original image of Star Wars that is edited in Luke Dasher profile, and the face under Elizabeth Stark is not Leia Organa, but is Queen Padme Amidala. So this is a very, very important. We made a huge mistake, so let's get it right.
Oh, Princess Leia is next to Han Solo. Who's in that picture? Who's the actual?
They just two ship troopers in the same space. They covered Leia's face.
Yeah.
Wait. This is not fair to our audience here.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks.
Well, I mean, Leia already has the right name, so
right?
So there is space for Leia because Leia
girls.
is on there.
I see it. There we go. Carrie Fisher.
Yeah. Too bad she died already, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
sad.
And Anthony Bourdain last night.
Yeah, something about a suicide.
He did last night.
He committed suicide, apparently.
What?
He did.
Oh my God.
Yeah, last night. Tone, well, just go off screen share for 1 second. I mean, yeah, for 1 second. I have one question for you.
Okay.
Well, because we found out you're such a big Star Wars fan. For anyone that was at the
no, I was a Star Wars fan. Episode 7 ruined that.
Well, I was just gonna ask you, Spock.
Wait. How did 1, 2, and 3 not ruin it, but number 7
I liked
did?
1, 2, and 3. I thought they
what?
were
Okay, all right, we can't be friends anymore. Tone, I mean, dude. How can you?
I have to defend Tone here. I mean, the 1, 2, 3
What?
1, 2, 3 is not great in my opinion, but something as bad as the last episode with the space cow with blue milk, something as bad was impossible to.
Okay.
I mean,
God.
Everything is better than the last episode.
Oh God!
I haven't even seen the last episode. I haven't seen it.
God!
I'm never gonna see episode 8. Episode 7 was so bad. I will never see another story.
No. That's what I said about episode 1. I got dragged back into the theaters for 2 and 3, but those are just so bad. Like they're just so bad. And there's like a really fun YouTube video that like goes through all of the things wrong with 1, 2, and 3 that you might have seen. I think it's called Red Letter Media. That was so emotionally satisfying for me to watch because it articulated for me what I already knew, which was that this was horrible. And I didn't know exactly why, but then they showed all the film techniques that were lazy and stupid and didn't. I mean, like in a way, that's like my inspiration for why I write. It's to give people emotional relief in seeing scams for what they actually are. So,
but episode 8
Well, I haven't
can
seen 8.
compare
My kids haven't
okay,
asked me to
don't.
go look at it, but yeah. Oh
So
God.
we would be in the Bitcoin tech space for you guys to be that heated about a Star Wars conversation right now. Yeah, gonna cut you guys off anyway.
Yeah, I was a guest on my friend's like comic book radio show where we discussed episode 7. I gotta tweet that out again.
All right, and we get you to laugh on that one. That's a good one. Tone, I assume.
Well, how do we get on that discussion?
Because there's the Star Wars on Luke's.
Yeah,
Okay.
Luke Dashier.
No, but like on anyway. Well,
That was
forgot what the question
obnoxious.
is. Yeah.
Tone, you're
started
teaching
it,
tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm teaching the workshop tomorrow. I gotta go get some food, guys. I haven't eaten in like since yesterday's show. So I gotta find some food. Lots of good carnivore places around here, and we'll see if I manage to stay away from beer. Hey, very important question. I keep forgetting to ask. When we do the carnivore show, can someone find out if alcohol is allowed on a carnivore diet?
It's not.
Oh, that's a problem.
Sorry, I mean it's just carbs that have been processed even more through fermenting, right?
See,
like
at least I can drink. At least I can drink all the tequila I can. I'm physically capable on the paleo.
Yeah, but also Jimmy, if he drinks so much that he throws up, then
then maybe that's okay. Yeah. So you need to drink and purge, drink and purge, drink and purge. Yeah.
Hey, Tone is talking about not eating, so anorexia. Now you guys are talking about bulimia.
Yeah.
Let's just this is getting in dangerous territory here, but
why is it dangerous? It's funny. I don't know.
True. All right, gentlemen, everybody, thanks so much for watching.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Jimmy,
This song is done, guys.
Tone.
Good luck trading out there.